Hi, so in this video we're going to take a look at two new command line tools that I wrote that allow you to manage symbolic links on your system in a bit of an easier way than you would be able to do with just like the standard ln command and things like that. So there's two command line tools that I created for this purpose, and one of them is kind of for moving symbolic links primarily, and the other one for removing them. So like the first one, the one that's for moving symbolic links, will allow you to move them in such a way that basically the target of the link will be adjusted depending on where you move it, so that the relative path to the target of the link will still work. So that's kind of the main purpose of that, and there's also other functionality available there, which I'll show you in this video. And the second utility is for removing symbolic links together with their targets. So if you want to remove both the link and the file that it links to, that utility allows you to do that, and it also has other features as well. But that's that was kind of the starting point for me to just start writing this tool. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Basically, here are the tools. So the first one is called reln, and the second one is called unln, which stands for relink and unlink respectively. And the ln part is kind of a reference to the ln command, of course. So I haven't uploaded these to GitHub yet, but of course I will once I release this video. And yeah, but this is the repository structure that you'll get. Essentially, it's very similar to my other command line tools. If you happen to have used them previously, but if not, it's very simple. Basically, all of the installation instructions will be provided in the README file, which you will be able to see when you go to the links to the GitHub repos that I'll post in the description to this video. So there's going to be this installation section, and it describes what you need to do in order to install these tools. So that's the installation. Basically, you just need to link or copy the main script file and the man page, which is recommended. It's not like required, but it makes sense to do that so that you can view the manual more easily. And yeah, like it's very simple. Everything is described in that installation section, and this for the second tool, it's the same procedure. So all right, so let's start talking about this, but just really briefly, I wanted to give you to give this video a bit of context. I wanted to just talk about one of the sort of applications of symbolic links that I find incredibly useful, but there's a ton of different ways that you can use them, and they're very helpful. Basically, for example, I have this folder with some free videos here that I downloaded from Wikimedia Commons, and when I was downloading those files, they basically they came in several versions of different resolutions, and I didn't know which one I would want to use, so I just downloaded all of them. But then there's also a subtitle file, and you normally want to match the name of the video to the subtitle so that it automatically opens if you open it in the media player, for example. And also kind of doesn't make sense to have all the versions in the same folder, because you probably are going to use one of them most of the time, and the rest you just kind of have as a backup for some particular situation you might come across, for example. And so what I did is basically I created this .versions folder in each one of these directories for each video, and I symlinked the version of the video that I thought I would be using the most. I went for the 1080p, the highest resolution, and I just symlinked it in this folder, and I named the link the way I would name the video file so that it plays. It has several advantages, like there's fewer files in this folder, so if I just look at it, I don't see like the hidden folder and like all of this additional stuff that I don't use very often. I only see the files that I use most often. Also, it has an advantage of preserving the original file name, so I don't have to rename them, so I can keep the original file name. And I can name the symbolic link whatever I prefer to call it, but then the original file name is still there, so I don't lose that information. And basically, yes, I did the same for each of these videos. So this is just one example that I wanted to give here, but like symbolic links are incredibly helpful to use just like in your own file management. And on Linux, you like see them all the time, like symbolic links from like all over the system. So yeah, essentially they're a very good way to help you have like it's as though having the several files in several locations in your system, because the symbolic link behaves as a file would. So very helpful. But let's start talking about these tools that I created. And I'll open the manuals for them, and basically by using this method I just found out how to like open several man pages in less like at the same time, so that I can switch between them without having to reopen man. So like with the normal man command you'd have to just like close the previous manual and then open the new one, but by using this method you can open several of them at the same time and less, and it looks exactly like what you see in the man when you open a manual with the man command. So this is just like a little bonus for this video. This is how you can do it. But so now I'll press enter, and now they're like both of the manuals are opened here. I can switch between them by typing :n for next and :p for previous. So that's how that works. So let's see. So let me first create some links. So like the reln command, and although like I said that the main purpose is for moving the links, it can also create links. And let me just quickly create links for these files that I have here. So I have a directory that has a subdirectory called files, and there's several files in there. So I can simply go reln files star and pass the target directory, which is the current directory. So I put the dot in there for the current directory. Now I have press enter. It first runs a simulation so that you can preview that what it's going to do is what you want it to do, and then I can pass -r to run it for real. I like to prepend commands like this that sort of like execute an operation that I might want to avoid accidentally executing from history. So like prepending it a space prevents it from being added to history. So I will do that. So if I press up now, I only have this command. So this the one with -r was not added. Just like I guess like just to give since I mentioned this a quick like digression to enable this capacity to just like prepend the command with the space and prevent it from being added to history. You have to have hist control equals ignore both set in your bash rc. On Debian it's set by default, but yeah, you might need to set it for like on some other system. But okay, let's not digress too much from the topic. So basically here's our testing directory. We now have symbolic links for these files created here. So yes, so let's say I wanted to move these links to a different location. So I'll create just a subdirectory. I'll call it dir keep it simple. And let's say I wanted to move them to that subdirectory. So, but like if I use the mv command, I would that would not work, because as you'll see in a moment, now these links are shown in red because they're broken, because these targets do not exist. And the reason for that is because like this is a relative path, and it depends on the location, so it has to be adjusted. Essentially, you have to recreate all of these links again. Like for symbolic links, you can't really edit the target. You have to remove the link and create a new link. That's how that works. So let me move those files back to where they were. So now we have everything working again. So how can we do that with reln? It's very simple. It's just reln and then again star-test to match all of these files, and then put them to dir. The same syntax I used for the mv command when I moved them, but it didn't work in that case. So basically, yes, I could have even done just this, replace mv with reln in this case. So now I can press enter and I can preview what it's gonna do. So let's take a look at this for a second. Basically, what's happening here is it says that, like in the first column, it just what you'll see is like each argument that was passed to reln on the command line, except for the last one, which is the target directory. So all of the input, like all of the source files. So here's all of them, and then you have this red X, which stands for remove this file. Essentially, like by default, the behavior is to recreate those links and remove the original link, which effectively amounts to moving the link to a new location and adjusting its target. So as you can see, it will create a link in this dir subdirectory, and then like the name of the link will be the same, and then the target will be changed. You can see that now it added something to the path, so that it goes one directory down, and the links still work. So now if I run this, we can see that everything was moved correctly, and the links now work. So that's moving links. Now you could also choose to keep the original links. So in order to do that, so let's say I wanted to move these links now back from dir to the current. So if I run this right now, it shows like that the originals will be removed by which like this X, red X symbol. That's what that stands for. And what I could do is I could pass. Let me kind of refer to the manual a little bit. So keep original, it's this option, -K. So if I pass that, you can see that now it doesn't show the X anymore, but the pluses. So now that was still a simulation. So now if I run this, the links were copied instead of being moved. So that's copying links. So basically, going back to this man page, we took a look at this R option, which stands for run instead of simulating. You could also, like, if you really wanted to, you could change the default in the config file. The config file is provided in the repositories here, config.bash, like the sample file. Everything is commented out by default, but you could, so like in order to make it work, you need to put it into this directory, home.config reln, and then config.bash. So if you don't have that directory there, just create it and put that file in there. And like this, this is this first option, opt run. You can set it equals to like any value, but 1 is the convention that at least I personally use, but I've seen it a lot just being used by other people too. It just stands for like enabled. It's like true or false. Like in Bash you don't have booleans, so you use something like this. So the empty string, in this case I use that to symbolize, to represent false, and 1 is for true. So if you did this, then it would basically, if you run just a command like this, then it would not simulate it, but run it for real by default, and then you could use -R to simulate instead. But I would kind of I prefer to just like do the preview first and then run it, because as you'll see later in this video, well, I'm gonna explain like more complex operations. It's good to do the preview, because it might not turn out the way you expected to. Like something you might have like not realized that there was something about what you're doing that wasn't what you thought it is. So it's good to preview first. But you can change the defaults in the config file, and that is true for all the options. So we took a look at keep original as well, and I wanted to just mention this print-cmd command here. So basically, let me remove the subdirectory. Actually I should have kept the directory itself, but that's fine, I'll just create it again. So let's say I wanted to, kind of, let me find one of these commands that I already ran, like reln. So let's say I wanted to move them to that directory. So here's the norm, kind of the output that you get by default. If you pass -p as well as, well, if you pass -p, then you get more output, and it basically explains to you what commands are going to be run under the hood. So like first it's going to run this command to create the link, and then we'll unlink the original link. So this is just a way to like get more insight into what is happening under the hood, just like a more detailed report of what this tool is doing. So that's print-cmd. Now let's take a look at the other tool and its basic usage. So this tool is made for essentially removing links, and that is something that you will already like be able to do with just like with the unlink command or with the rm command. Although well, let me just kind of show you the usage, and then I'm gonna comment. So basically, let's say I wanted to, let me remove that directory so it's not distracting. So let's say I wanted to remove all of these links. I could do that with unln by just passing all of these links to it. It creates a similar output. Basically, what this means is like this X, and like it's sort of like it's crossing out the arrow that normally represents that there is a link. So it's sort of like breaking the link. And then this colon here stands for like do nothing. So by default, it only removes the links. So basically, if I run this, it will unlink everything. So the reason, now we don't have the links anymore. The reason I kind of prefer this over just like doing rm *-test, for example, is because like it doesn't check if it's a link. So you could remove, if you want to like removing a symbolic link is a fairly safe operation, because it's only a link, you could create it again. But if you remove a file by accident, that's a bad thing. So I thought it would be nice to just be able to like pass several links to some command and have it check that those indeed are links, and then remove them. So this is the default behavior of unln. So now we don't have our links anymore. So let me create them again with reln. So let's see, files. Yeah, I'll run this again. So we have the link, all the links back. But I said that kind of like what I said previously was kind of the main reason I wrote unln was to remove links and their targets. So by default it does this, and it doesn't touch the target, which is represented here by this column. So unln can also remove targets. So let me show you that. In the manual, the option for it is -t or remove targets, and there's also -T for no remove targets. So the default is actually none, which corresponds to essentially this. These remove targets none and no remove targets are equivalent. So that's the default. By default, as we saw, it doesn't touch the targets. But you can remove them, and the simplest thing you could do is simply passing -t, which is equivalent to passing -t all. So the argument to this option is optional, so you can omit it, and when you do it, it is the same as passing -t all. So in this case, it will remove targets. As you can see now, we have X's over here, but I should create some additional files here, because basically you can distinguish between the type of the target, whether it is link, that by which I mean that the target itself, the target of the link, is another link, or if it's a normal file. So let's demonstrate that. So right now we don't have any links pointing to other links. So I will just create one with ln simply. And yeah, okay, let me first create like another file. I'll create a file called 10 test, and I will create a link to it, and I'll call it target. And I will also create a link to that target, and I'll call the link 10 test. So here was what we have now. We have 10 test points to target and target points to files 10 test. So now if I basically, going back to what we were talking about, so if I pass -t or -t all, then all of the targets are removed. So you can see that like what unln does, it also provides some information on what the target itself is pointing to, and there's also a way to remove like these like basically go all the way down to removing this file, but I'll mention that. I'll talk about that later. Basically right now we're only really interested in the links that we are removing and what that link specifically is pointing to, but not what potential links that are targets might be pointing to. We'll talk about that later. So -t or -t all removes both the files that are targets and the links that are targets. Now if I pass -t files, where now that this target is no longer touched because it's a link, and -t links will only remove the targets that are links. So I suppose, well, okay, let's just run -t for the sake of this demonstration to see what happens when we run this for real. So now if I run tree, we see that all of the links were removed and all of the files were removed, but also the files that were targets to those links were also removed, and also the target that was a link was removed, but this file remained untouched because it was not the direct target, like an immediate target of any of these links that we were removing. I'll talk about how to kind of go all the way down this this sequence of links to remove everything a bit later. So let me recreate our stuff. So remove that 10 test. So now we have just this. So I'll go touch files 1 to 10, or not 10 but to 9 hyphen test. This is what we had. Let's also create some links again, so I'll just use reln for this. File start to the current directory and run it. So okay, we have everything back. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about is how to change the kind of link that it is. Right now we have links that use relative paths to point to their targets. So, but you could also have an absolute path there. So reln can also change, help you change that as well. So let's see. Let me switch back to the reln's menu, and the option for this is this one -l link type. So the default is auto, and auto determines the type of link based on basically when you're moving the links, it will preserve the kind of link that it is. If it's a relative link, it will keep it relative. If it is an absolute link, it will keep it absolute. But you can also force or like tell it what kind of link you want to get at the end by specifying relative or absolute. So and you could do it when copying or moving links to a different place, or you can also change them in place. So for example, let's try just changing one link. Let's say I wanted to make one test to be an absolute path. So for that I can simply do reln one test and then put the same name as the target, and I can specify L absolute. So it will tell you that file already exists because it does, and to basically tell it to overwrite, you need to pass -y as well. So in this case, it will replace the file. This equals sign stands for replace. So it's instead of the X that you get when it's removing the original file, when you just are editing the same link in place, it's using the equals sign to represent that, but it's still highlighted in red because it's because there's a change occurring there, and the original link will be removed, but there is just a new one will be put in its place right away. So that's what the equals sign and the output represents. So now if I run this, we can see that the type of the link was changed. So now it's using the absolute path instead of the relative path, but otherwise the links is pointing to the same file. So we can also of course do this same thing when moving or copying links. So for example, I could do to test and move it to dir to test, and yeah, so in this case I wouldn't need to pass the Y because it wouldn't be editing the file in place, but you can see that what it does is basically changing the type of path that the link uses for its target. So like without any specifying the path, it would use the original link's type, so that would be relative, but I can specify that no, I want absolute, Or we can also test it out with our link called one test, because now it uses the absolute path. So if I were to try to move it into the directory without specifying the type of link, so that would be using the auto option here, then it would still keep it absolute. So I could also even pass both 1 and 2 to it, and it would like the auto mode would keep it the links, the type that they have originally. So but if I specified either relative or absolute, that would basically override that whatever the original path was, and it will create whatever we want from that. So yeah, like let's just run this, just like preserving the original type, and now the links were moved to this directory while their paths were preserved, but I could also have changed it if I wanted to. So that's how that works. Now, I've also just touched on how to create single links with reln without explicitly explaining it, but let me just say a few things about it so that it's clear how this works. Essentially, there's two forms that reln has. One of them is basically when you have only two arguments. In this case, the first argument takes as your link or a file if you're creating a new link, and then the target can be either a directory or a link. So in this case, you can rename the link essentially. So, but if you pass multiple links or files, then the last argument must be a directory. So that's how that works. I think it's clear since I already just did it several times while demonstrating the previous point, so I'm not going to do it again. So I hope this is clear how that works. This is essentially the same syntax as you use with the mv and cp commands, so if you're familiar with those, this applies here as well. Now let's talk about some further functionality that unln has, because it can not only remove links, but it can actually also remove files. That is made so that it's easier to basically remove things in bulk. So if you have a bunch of links and a bunch of files, you could still use unln to do that. So even though it's kind of its main purpose is to remove links and the targets of links, you could also tell it to remove normal files. So let's just cover that real quick. To do that, you use the -f option or --remove files. So let me see. Let me remove that dir that we have there. So we just have this right now, and let's say yeah, let's just create a couple of files there for the sake of this demonstration. I'll call them, I don't know, file 1 and file 2. That's enough. So I could do unln, and then I can pass, I'll just pass all of these links that I have, which are called something -test, so I'll use star-test, and then I can also pass all of these file _ star to it as well. So if I just run this, you can see it's not doing anything with the files by default. But if I pass -f, it will remove them. So this is kind of a way to remove links and files at the same time. I figured kind of wouldn't hurt to have that option there, but it's disabled by default, of course, because kind of the thought behind that was that you would just normally use it to remove links and make sure that those are indeed links. So that is the default. So if you want to remove files as well, you can pass -f. Like you could also change it in the configuration file, but I don't know, like doesn't seem like a good idea. But yes, like all of these options can be configured and the defaults can be changed. So yeah, but by default we only remove files, like it will only remove files if you tell it to. So I could of course also combine this with removing the targets. So if I want to get rid of all of this, I could do that as well. So you can see how that works. So let me just, I'm going to run it, but I'm not going to remove targets when I run it because I don't want to recreate all of those files in this subdirectory here. So I'll remove all of the links and those two files that we created. So now that we ran this, we can see that we had this before, so all these links were removed and those two files as well. So now we only have the file subdirectory with everything in it. Now I've also said that we're going to talk about how to remove targets when they themselves are links and how you can basically go down the chain of the links and remove all of that. So let's take a look at that. So I'll clear the screen, and we don't have any links right now, but let's make something up. Let's, for example, yeah, I'll just create one link, or sort of like I'll create a chain of links. So let's just work with the file one test. That's going to be like the end of that chain, and I'll just create a link pointing to it. I'll call it yet another link. So let me use V for verbose here. So now we have this, and I'll create another link pointing to yet another link. I'll call that link another link. So another link pointing to here, and yet another link is pointing to the file. Let's create another one. So another link is going to be the target, and yeah, okay, fine. Let's do this tree, and I'll call like one test. So okay, so we have a chain like this, several links in it, and let's say I wanted to get rid of all of that. So I can use unln, or yeah, well, there's a similar option in reln as well, but let's first talk about removing such a sequence. So unln one test. If I just run this, it will display the entire chain, and by default it's only gonna remove the original link. So that's that, but then I can also remove the target. That will remove the target of that link, but it won't go any deeper down that sequence. So in order to go deeper down that sequence, you can use this dereference-targets option, or the short version is -L. And if you do that, so it will go down the entire chain, and it will remove the links or the files in that chain depending on what you specify. So I specified -t, that's the same as -t all, like we talked about before. So it's removing all the links and the files. So if I only wanted to remove the links in that chain, I could pass links and the file will get untouched. So that's kind of a safeguard against removing something you didn't intend to. Now we could also pass files here, in which case basically nothing will get removed, because in order for unln to traverse this chain, the target has to be specified as a link, or like it will have to be like either all or links. If you say files, then it just goes like, okay, this is a link, so it won't go any deeper into it. Basically, even though you specify files, this file at the end will not be removed in this case. Now back to reln. Reln also has this dereference-targets option. You can see that over here in the manual too. So let's see how that works. So we have this chain here. So let's say we wanted to move a link, like this link 1 test that points to basically some other links to a different location. Let me remove that 2 tests since we're kind of done with that part of the demonstration. Yeah, so 2 tests, get rid of that. Okay, so yeah, let me also create a subdirectory again, because we're going to be moving stuff. And okay, so reln 1 test, and we want to move it to dir. So we can see now the entire chain of the links that will kind of follow the from the target, but the target will be adjusted if I moved it to that new location. But let's see. So we can also use the -l option to just get rid of all those intermediate links and point straight to the target, to the file at the end of that chain. So we can do that. But what you can also do is you can pass a specific number of levels that you want to traverse. So the default is 0. So basically this is what it does when you don't specify anything by default. It just simply points to the original. It just preserves the original target. If I pass 1, now one of the levels is removed, and so on. So I can keep increasing this number until I reach the desired level, and then I can move that link. So when I reach 3, that already points to the last file, and if I keep increasing, that doesn't produce any results in this case, but if there was more links, it would. Now when I just pass -l without any argument, it is the same as passing inf for infinity. So yeah, that's one of the, you can pass an integer from 0 greater than or equal to 0, or inf for infinity, or you can omit the value, in which case it's gonna be the same as infinity. So we can now also jump back to unln to see how this selection of levels works with this tool. So yeah, so I could specify to what level of this I want to go. Basically this I need to specify to remove targets, and yes, so now we can say that, like, so by default I pass I don't pass any value, and by default that means when I don't pass any value, that means infinity, so I could pass inf and that will do the same thing. But so L0 is just don't dereference target at all. But note that in this case, because I said remove the target but don't dereference it, so like it won't touch any of the links that the target itself is pointing to. So when I pass 1, it will also remove the first link after the target. So when I pass 2, it will remove the second one, and so on. Like if I pass 3 and I passed -t all, because remember when I don't specify any value to t, it's the same as all. So I could so I did L3. Now this file has been reached, and it was also included in the removal. But I could, if I said links here, then that would get excluded because it's not a link. So I hope you can see now how all these things work together. Yes. So let's now run something for the sake of this demonstration. Let's just kind of remove the entire thing. So we'll remove this entire chain. Yes, let's do that. Maybe except for the last file, because I want to keep it for the rest of the video. So basically -l, but only remove links. So that will produce this result. Now if I pass -r and run it, I have this as the result. So all the links were removed. And I didn't actually use that subdirectory, but that's okay. We saw all of the kind of the results in the simulation. So that's that. Alright, so there's a couple more options that we haven't talked about yet, and all of those options are the options for the reln tool. So let's take a look at this mode option, -m or --mode. So up until now we've been using reln in the relink mode, and there's also the link mode. And the difference is that in the relink mode, if one of the arguments that you pass to reln is a link, then it moves that link or copies it. But if it's a file, then it links to the file. So that's in the relink mode. But in the link mode, it always links to whatever you pass to it, regardless of whether it's a link or a file. So let's take a look at an example. So in this subdirectory called files, we have 9 files right now. So we need a link for this example. So to do that, I'll switch to that file's directory for a moment, and I will create a new file. I'll call it target. And I'll create a new link as well, pointing to that file called target. And I'll call the link simply 10-test. So I can go back to the directory where I was, and now we have this. So now let's go reln, and I'll just use the file test file number 9 and the 10th one that we just created. And let's say I'm gonna, and as the target, I'm gonna just put the current directory. So if I run this right now, so this is running right now in the relink mode. That's the default. So in this case, what we get is that it goes like, okay, so 9test is a file, so I will create a link and make that file a target. But for the 10test, it goes, it's a link, so I will just move that link and adjust its target appropriately. So that's the relink mode. So now if I switch to the link mode, it will do something different. For the file, the situation is exactly the same, but for the link, it basically treats the link as the file with no difference. So now it will just create a link to that file, and then the rest remains as it was. So now if I run this, let's see what it did. It simply created two links, and both of them like point to something in that files directory. 9test points to files 9test, and 10test points to files 10test, but 10test is a link by itself. So that's what the link mode does. Now there's also one additional thing that I wanted to also cover, and that's about these link-type-auto-files method and link-type-auto-files-fallback options and what they do. So essentially this has to do with creating links to files with reln. Doesn't have anything to do with moving links. So let's see, let me clean up this space. I'll remove that 10test and 9test, and I'll also remove 10test in the files directory and files target as well. So we just have our original 9 files that we had in the beginning. So let's say I wanted to just create links to all of these files with reln. So we already know how to do that. Very simple, file/star, and let's put them in the current directory. So it would create all these links. But the way it determines whether to create a relative link or a symbolic link is actually depends by default on the path that you pass on the command line to the file. So if I pass absolute paths, I can do that by just simply appending or prepending the pwd variable, which always contains the name of the current working directory. So if I did this, now we have much longer lines. That's because this expanded to basically all the files that were matched, and everything is also prepended with the relative or with the path to the current direction, making it an absolute path to the file. So, and as you can see, the targets of the links also became absolute paths. So this is how it behaves by default. This is how the link type auto. So these options are called link type auto files. So this is refers to link type set to auto, and files refers to the fact that we are working with files and not links. So, but there is like so by default, what it does is it uses this link type auto files method called auto, which it looks at what you pass on the command line, and then it determines based on that, okay, they passed an absolute path, so I'll make a link with an absolute path as the target, or they passed a relative path, so I'll make a link with a relative path as the target. But there's also another way. So we can use link type auto files method fallback, and that will use the value of this fallback option. I didn't include the default here, but I think the default is relative. Let me check that. I'll update the man page by the time I release it, but yeah, so the default is relative. So basically now I can change the method. Wait, I already, yeah. Link type auto files method equals fallback. That's what I can put there instead of auto. So then it will not look anymore at what kind of path you pass on the command line, and it will just always fall back to whatever the value of this other option, link type auto files fallback, is. So by default that is relative, but I could also set that to absolute, whether in the config file or on the command line. Link-type-auto-files-fallback equals, the default is relative, but I can change it to absolute. And so in that case, it would always do absolute, even if I pass relative paths here. So that's what that does. It just kind of is a bit of a fine tuning of how this auto mode of link type works. So that's what that does. So we're pretty much done with the options. Let's see. So okay, so the only thing that that remains that I wanted to talk about is just to cover a few protective measures that are built into reln, so that you don't accidentally do something that either doesn't make sense or can potentially overwrite something and stuff like that. So let's kind of go through that real quick, and let's see what that is all about. So the first thing is it will not perform duplicate operations. So basically, if I pass the same thing twice, or even more than twice, like let's say 3 times, oh, I forgot the target. So it will only perform the last one of those operations. So that will that's how that works. So it cancels all of the ones that go before that. So no duplicate operations are allowed. But that's just like to warn you that like you passed something that you perhaps didn't mean to pass on the command line, because that just doesn't make sense to do that. Now, the other thing that it won't do is, like, let's say I had another folder here. Let me just kind of create a copy of this files directory for this example. So I'll just copy files and create another folder called more, which is going to be identical to the files. And let's say you kind of decide like, okay, I want to link all of this stuff to the current working directory. And what is going to happen is it's going to say will not write to one test because this destination has been already used previously. And of course, it's been used here because there's the file with the same name in the files folder, but over here it just has the same file name, so the link would have the same name, and then the link would, like, if this was allowed, then it wouldn't create all of the links. This would override this, and like 2 tests would override the first 2 tests, etc. So that is being prevented. So yeah, and like in these messages, you can always see the kind of the operations that so like it has been used previously in this operation, and it says 1, so this 1 refers to the number, and you can see which one it was that that caused this this error or warning. So that's another thing, duplicate destinations essentially. So we already saw that it won't overwrite existing files if there is an existing file. So let's say I wanted to go ahead and like create links from files, and let's say I put all of that stuff into more, and it's gonna say file already exists, and you can pass Y to overwrite. So if I did that, then the operation would run, and I can even run it for real, and you can see that everything works. So it will ask you first, basically, if you want to overwrite something. But in some cases, it won't ask you, it will just tell you I won't do it. And that is going to happen if you are about to overwrite the file with a link to itself. And that can only happen if you pass something like this, file/star, and put all of those links to files. So it will say will not overwrite such and such with a symbolic link to itself, because if it did that, it would put a link to there that would point to itself. I mean, just kind of. I hope you see what I mean. It just it's a nonsensical operation, and I just decided to prevent it entirely. You can still create such a link with ln if you want to, but I just don't really see how that what that would do. It's essentially like cd files, let's say lnsf to overwrite one test pointing to one test. Yeah, it even says that they're the same file. I did manage to create it somehow at one point. Maybe I just need to remove the file first. Yeah, so here, like it doesn't even show up as a link that that works. It just kind of. So that's what it would create. Like if I ran that operation, it just does not make sense at all. It shows up as a broken link, even though it kind of refers to itself. But it's just like, yeah, I don't know why that ever would be necessary. But the ln command allows you to create it. So yes, let me recreate that file again. Files1 test. So now it also will not overwrite or remove files that are referenced by other links in the same operation. So this is a bit more complex, but let's see if we can come up with an example. So for example, I could go into this more directory, and I could create another link there pointing to one of the links in that directory. So I will create a link pointing to 9 test, and I'll call the link 10 test. So now we have this, and now if I tried going reln 9 test, or it should be more 9 tests more 10 test to the current directory, since 10 test is referencing 9 test, it will not remove 9 test. So this X was changed to a plus, and it's highlighted in yellow because it gave rise to this warning. But basically the intention is that you don't remove some links that would actually break the links that you are moving within the same operation. So that kind of is meant to prevent errors like this. So if I had like I could create yet another link and say I'll point it to 10 test, and I'll call it just 11 test. And so now if I try moving all of those more 11 test, it like those warnings appear again, and it also shows you by what links this link was referenced. So you can then figure out what gave rise to those warnings. So this is where it won't remove links that are referenced by other links in the same operation. Something related is where it will not remove files or like won't overwrite files that are referenced by something in the same operation. So let me kind of remove these links that we just created. And let's say I have like a link here that is pointing to something. So okay, this is kind of a bit yes, kind of a bit complicated, but basically if I had a file in this directory where I am right now, in this root directory, our test directory, that was called, for example, one-test, but it was a file, right? So now if I go to more and create a link that is pointing to that file that I just created, one test, so I'll go one directory down, one test, and I'll create a new link called 10-test. So now we have this, and so now if I try going reln, let's say I want to just kind of go like more and like move everything from more to the current directory. So, but there will be a problem because it will try to overwrite one test, but one test is already referenced by 10 tests, so it won't do it. It's basically telling you need to sort this out because this will break the links in this operation, so it won't allow you to just pass like -y and overwrite it. So that's another similar measure to prevent breaking your links. There is one exception to this, and basically that is, let's say I had a, let me clear the screen. So if I had a link here in this test directory, yeah, this is a bit difficult to kind of show without making it complicated, but basically, let me see. So a link, let's call it point it to something. Doesn't really matter what it's pointing to. I'll just point it to files 9 test, and yeah, let's just call it 9 test as well. I don't need to pass the name for that. So let's say we have such a link here, and now if I go to more, cd more, and let's create another link here called 11 test, and we'll point it to that 9 test that we just created. So like I said, a bit complicated, but hopefully it will become clear in a moment. So let's see. So now we can do reln, and we can go more. test, and let's say for some reason we also include 9 tests in this, so this would result in like 9 tests being edited in place. And so basically it will allow that because you could you might want to like in this case it just kind of recreates it with the exact same target, but maybe you wanted to like do like L absolute, for example. In this case it would be different. So it will allow, as you can see, it says here editing 9 tests in place, so we'll proceed even though it is referenced by other links in this operation, because it's referenced by 11 tests. Like normally it wouldn't allow it, like we saw just in the previous example, but in this case it's an exception. But you still need to pass y to overwrite, but that's all. You always have to do that when you edit links in place, because there is a file being overwritten. So in this case it just becomes a warning to let you know that that this link that you're moving is referenced by another link in your operation. And finally, one last thing that I want to include here is something related to unln. So let me clean up all of this mess that we created. We don't need that anymore. It's just something that you might see in the output, and I thought I explain it here as well in case, so that it's clear what that means. So just a sec, let me remove all of these files. So okay, so we have these links here. Let's kind of create again that situation where we have one link referenced by another. So like I'll point a link called 10 test to 9 test, just that, nothing more. So that's what we have. So if I now go on unln more 9 test and more 10 test, what we'll see is that since in this sequence this 9 test was already removed, it will just show you that information here by crossing it out, and then you will have this symbol after the that link. And if I, for example, included the targets, then this file will also be removed, and this link is pointing to the same file, so that will also be shown here. It will just like cross it out and show it like a tilde here. So this is just what I wanted to mention in case you see that in the output. That's what that means. That's just informational. It doesn't have any bearing on the operation. It's just that this has already been removed and it doesn't have anything to do. That's all that means. Alright, I think this is gonna be it for this video, so thanks for watching. I hope you like these new tools and that they help you manage symbolic links on your system in an easier way, and that certain operations like removing symbolic links with their targets or moving symbolic links to a different location now will be easier for you to perform. So yeah, this is it. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked this video, and I will see you in the next one.